Close your eyes. Imagine an ancient garden, lit only by moonlight. The air is filled with the scent of roses, and somewhere in the distance, a flute plays a sound both mournful and sweet, as if it has carried across centuries just to reach you tonight. This is the world of Jalal al-Din Rumi, a 13th-century mystic, poet, and teacher whose words have crossed languages, cultures, and oceans to find you here, in this quiet moment. Why is it that people, across time and space, return to his verses when their hearts feel heavy? Why do his words written hundreds of years ago in the dust of Persia still feel like they were written yesterday? For you, personally, Rumi believed that love, longing, and the search for meaning are not weaknesses, but gateways. He told us, "What you seek is seeking you," a promise that the deepest desires of our heart are not in vain, that they are echoes calling us home. Tonight, as you rest, let Rumi guide you into a journey where philosophy is not dry or abstract, but alive and breathing in poetry. His voice invites you into the mysteries of love, the power of silence, the dance of the soul, and the eternal pull between separation and unity. So settle in, breathe slowly. Let the night soften around you, and as your mind drifts between wakefulness and sleep, allow Rumi's vision of the universe, gentle, luminous, and endlessly mysterious, to carry you into dreams. In the quiet of night, when the world grows still and the noise of the day softens into silence, a subtle invitation begins to stir within us. It is that feeling of being called toward something larger than ourselves, a pull that we cannot name, but which we can sense, like the tide responding to the moon's pull. Centuries ago, in the dust and gardens of Persia, there was a man who gave words to this mysterious longing. Jalal al-Din Rumi, known simply as Rumi, lived during the 13th century, a time of turmoil, shifting empires, and spiritual searching. And yet his voice was not lost to the centuries. Instead, it has grown louder with each passing age. Until tonight, it reaches you here, inviting you to listen, to dream, to wander with him into the endless mystery of the soul. Rumi was born in the year 1207, in the city of Balkh, in present-day Afghanistan. His family fled westward when the Mongol invasion spread fear and destruction across the region, eventually settling in Konya, in what is now Turkey. This was a world teeming with uncertainty. Cities rose and fell, empires clashed, the streets echoed with the sound of merchants, soldiers, and wandering mystics. Yet within this swirl of instability, Rumi found something timeless. He discovered poetry as a vessel of the soul, a way of listening to the eternal within the fragile human moment. The night sky was Rumi's cathedral, the rose garden, his scripture. For him, every breeze carried a message, every silence was a form of speech, and every fleeting experience was a thread leading back to something infinite. He told us that what we truly long for is not far away, but right here, waiting in the fabric of our lives. And he whispered that our yearning itself is sacred. The hunger for truth, the ache for belonging, the desire for love. These are not flaws of the human heart. They are signs of its origin, reminders that the soul was made for more than survival. Imagine Rumi's world for a moment. Narrow streets lit by oil lamps, the murmur of scholars debating in courtyards, merchants unfurling silks from distant lands, and in the quiet corners, mystics gathering to chant and to whirl in their devotion to God. It was in this atmosphere that Rumi grew, absorbing both the scholarly teachings of theology and law, and the whispered mysteries of the Sufis, those wanderers of the spirit, who sought not just knowledge of God, but union with the divine presence itself. For the Sufi, the world was not a place to escape, but a veil to see through. Every event, joyful or sorrowful, was a signpost pointing back to the beloved. This is why Rumi's words feel so alive even today. They are not only instructions or lessons, they are invitations. He asks us to step into a garden, to sit by a river, to listen to the reed flute as it cries for its home. He draws us into images so simple, yet so profound, that we find ourselves remembering something we never knew we had forgotten. When he says, "The wound is the place where the light enters you," he is not speaking in riddles. He is reminding us that the ache in our chest, the heaviness in our heart, is not a curse but a doorway. And when he says, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure," he is teaching us to trust the wisdom of time, to see life as a patient teacher rather than a cruel master. As you lie here tonight, letting your mind soften into rest, Rumi's presence joins you. He does not shout. He does not lecture. Instead, he speaks like a friend beside a fire, or a companion walking slowly along the shore. He tells you that your restless heart is not alone. Every human being who has ever lived has felt the same call. The shepherd in the field, the queen in her palace, the student with an open book, the traveler far from home, all of them, in their own way, have heard the quiet summons of the soul. And Rumi's poetry is simply an echo of that eternal summons. The moonlit invitation is this: to see your life as more than random chance, more than duties and distractions. To sense that beneath the patterns of ordinary days, there is a pulse, a heartbeat, a great love that is drawing you closer. When Rumi writes of the beloved, he is not merely speaking of a human partner. He is speaking of the divine presence that hides in plain sight. The beloved is the breath moving in your chest. The beloved is the stillness between your thoughts. The beloved is the mystery that causes you to look at the stars and feel both small and infinite at once. To follow Rumi is not to escape the world, but to see it more clearly. The garden in the morning is no longer just flowers and dew. It is a mirror of the paradise within your soul. The friend who sits with you in silence is not merely passing time. They are showing you the quiet embrace of eternity. The pain you carry in your body and mind is no longer just a burden. It is a sign that you are alive, open, and still capable of longing. As sleep begins to draw nearer, imagine that you are walking into one of Rumi's gatherings in Konya. The lamps flicker against the stone walls. A circle of seekers sits in silence, their heads bowed, their hearts listening. And then, softly, someone begins to recite a verse. The words float like incense through the air. Don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth. You hear this, and you realize that the myth he speaks of is not fantasy. It is the story of your own becoming, the slow unfolding of your soul's true shape. Rumi believed that each of us carries a hidden book within us, a story written before time, waiting to be read. Life, with all its challenges and joys, is the process of revealing those hidden pages. Every encounter, every heartbreak, every moment of laughter is ink upon the paper of the soul. And when he says, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even if winter cuts you down to the bone," he is telling you that every chapter matters. Nothing is wasted. The moonlit invitation is to trust this unfolding, to lean into the mystery with courage and softness. And tonight, as your breathing slows and your body grows heavier against the bed, perhaps you can sense that invitation within yourself, the pull toward something vast and beautiful, the echo of love that is older than time. Let it guide you, not as an idea, but as a gentle rhythm that carries you toward rest. And as you drift, imagine that you are stepping into that eternal garden, where every leaf whispers your name, and every star reminds you that what you seek is already seeking you. The story of Rumi cannot be told without speaking of Shams of Tabriz. Without Shams, Rumi might have remained a respected scholar, a teacher of law and theology, perhaps remembered by students but not by the world. It was Shams who ignited the fire that transformed him from a jurist into a poet, from a scholar into a mystic. Their meeting was not just an event in history. It was a collision of souls, the kind of encounter that alters everything and sends ripples through centuries. Shams of Tabriz was not a conventional figure. He was a wandering dervish, a mystic whose very presence disturbed and unsettled. He cared nothing for reputation or comfort. He was raw, fierce, and uncompromising in his search for truth. To those who lived cautiously, he seemed reckless. To those who lived by appearances, he seemed mad. But Shams carried with him a fire of longing, and it was this fire that Rumi's soul had secretly been waiting for. Rumi, before Shams, was a man of discipline and respect. He was admired as a scholar, surrounded by students versed in the intricacies of Islamic law, theology, and philosophy. He taught, he guided, he advised. But beneath this respectable exterior, there was a longing that words of doctrine could not satisfy. He had studied the scriptures, but he longed to taste the wine hidden in their words. He had taught about God, but he wanted to be consumed by God. And then, in the year 1244, Shams arrived in Konya, and everything changed. The stories of their first meeting vary, wrapped in legend and mystery. Some say Shams approached Rumi in the street and asked a question that pierced him to the core. Who was greater, Muhammad or Bayezid Bastami? Rumi answered according to theology, but Shams challenged him, saying that Muhammad's greatness lay not in ecstatic visions, but in the ability to remain sober, grounded, and present after touching the infinite. Another version says that Shams simply gazed at Rumi with such intensity that words were unnecessary. Whatever truly happened, it was as if two sparks met and became a flame that could not be extinguished. For months, Rumi and Shams were inseparable. They retreated into conversation that lasted for days, forgetting food, forgetting time, lost in the rapture of divine remembrance. Students grew jealous. Family members were bewildered. What kind of teacher abandons his school, his duties, for the company of a wandering dervish? But for Rumi, it was not abandonment. It was awakening. Shams unlocked in him a depth of love that was both human and divine. A love that blurred the boundaries between self and other, between friend and beloved, between lover and God. Imagine Rumi at this time, walking the streets of Konya, not as the orderly scholar, but as a man drunk on love. He was seen dancing in the marketplace, whirling in ecstasy, weeping in the streets, singing poems that poured from him like a river. This was not madness. This was transformation. Shams had shown him that God is not found only in books or rituals, but in the burning immediacy of love. The bond between Rumi and Shams scandalized many. Students felt abandoned. Colleagues muttered in disapproval. And then, suddenly, Shams disappeared. Some say he was murdered by jealous followers of Rumi. Others believe he simply vanished, moving on to wander again. Whatever the cause, his absence tore through Rumi's heart. The grief was unbearable. And yet out of this grief, the poetry began to flow. Rumi turned his sorrow into verse, into music, into whirling. He discovered that Shams had not truly left. for the flame he had lit continued to burn within. From this heartbreak emerged thousands of poems, collected in the Divan of Shams, named in honor of the friend who had broken open his heart. Every line was a song of longing, every word a gesture toward the presence that had never truly disappeared. In this way, Rumi learned that love's loss is never only loss. It is also a doorway into a deeper presence. Shams had entered him so completely that separation was impossible. The beloved had dissolved into the soul. This is why Rumi's poetry often sounds like both an address to a human friend and a prayer to God. When he says, "Don't get lost in your pain. Know that one day your pain will become your cure," he is speaking from the fire of loss, but also from the discovery that loss itself can transform into communion. Shams taught him that love is the path, and when the human beloved vanishes, the divine beloved reveals itself even more clearly. Think of the whirling dervishes spinning in their long white robes. Their dance is not random. It is a living memory of Rumi's transformation. To whirl is to imitate the turning of the heavens, to surrender control, to open the heart to the beloved. This practice, born of Rumi's grief and ecstasy, continues to this day, carrying forward the gift that Shams brought. Each spin is a remembrance, each turn a reenactment of the turning of Rumi's heart when he met the friend who shattered his world. Tonight, as you drift into sleep, consider this truth. Sometimes the people we meet are more than encounters. Sometimes they are mirrors, flames, thresholds. Shams was Rumi's threshold. He led him across the line between knowledge and love, between theology and poetry, between the outer world and the burning interior of the soul. And though Shams disappeared, his presence lived on in every word Rumi ever wrote afterward. The turning of Rumi's heart is also an invitation for your own. Perhaps there has been someone in your life who lit a flame within you, who broke open a door, who changed you forever, whether they stayed or whether they left. Perhaps you carry a longing that feels unbearable at times, but which might, like Rumi's grief, become your greatest gift. Rumi teaches us that no encounter is wasted, no loss is final. Every love, every heartbreak, every friendship is a chapter in the book of the soul. And so, the story of Shams and Rumi is not just their story, it is ours. It reminds us that love is both fire and healing, both presence and absence, both ecstasy and grief. It asks us to trust that the turning of our own hearts, however painful, is always leading us closer to the beloved. And with that thought, you may allow your own heart to soften, to turn gently in the silence, like a dervish beginning to whirl, carried by love into the arms of sleep. Love, for Rumi, was not an ornament to life. It was not merely an emotion that appeared occasionally in the heart, as fleeting as a spring blossom. To him, love was the very substance of existence. Everything that we are, everything that we seek, every question we ask, and every answer we long for, all of it was born out of love. When Rumi spoke of love, he did not mean only the tender affection between two people, though he celebrated that as well. He meant the longing of the soul for the source from which it came. He meant the eternal desire of every living being to return to its origin, the secret pull that guides even the smallest seed toward the sunday. He looked at the world and saw love everywhere, the moth circling the flame until it is consumed, the lover waiting restlessly for a single glance from the beloved, the child clinging to its mother's embrace. Even the planets, he said, spin in their courses because of love. Love was the invisible magnet that held creation together, the cosmic heartbeat that could be felt in every pulse. And yet, He insisted that the way we experience love in our human relationships, whether in friendship or desire or the quiet loyalty of companionship, was not separate from divine love. It was a reflection of it, a mirror through which we catch glimpses of eternity. Rumi would often tell stories in which the simplest gestures of love between people revealed infinite depth. The longing of a lover pacing in the night became a metaphor for the soul, restless for God. The weeping of a friend missing his companion became an image of humanity's ache for union with the beloved. By treating human love not as a distraction, but as a sacred symbol, Rumi gave ordinary longing a kind of holiness. To miss someone, to ache for someone, to burn with desire was not weakness in his eyes. It was the very proof that you were alive to the deeper currents of existence. He knew, of course, that human love can wound us. Lovers leave. Friends betray. Desire often burns us more than it soothes us. And yet, instead of condemning this pain, he sanctified it. The ache of longing, he said, is the most honest prayer we can offer. When your heart aches for another, or when you grieve for the loss of someone dear, that wound is also the soul crying for its eternal source. Pain, in this way, is transformed into a holy teacher, reminding us of the truth that no earthly love can ever be complete. Only in the embrace of the beloved beyond time can the hunger of the heart be satisfied. But Rumi was no cold philosopher detached from feeling. He himself lived and breathed this passion. His love for Shams of Tabriz was not only intellectual or spiritual, it was wild, consuming, and overwhelming. He knew firsthand the ecstasy of companionship and the devastation of loss. His verses spill over with tears and laughter, longing and fulfillment, all tangled together. He invites us into this paradox, showing that love is not clean or tidy. It is chaotic, untamable, and yet somehow the very order of the universe. To listen to Rumi is to be reminded that longing itself is sacred. The way your chest tightens when you miss someone, the way your heart leaps when you think of them, that is the language of the divine, speaking in you. Love does not diminish when it hurts. It deepens. For Rumi, it was as if God scattered fragments of love into every corner of human life, so that no matter where we turned, we might stumble upon a doorway back to the infinite. He compared the heart to a reed flute, hollow and trembling with song. The flute's music, he said, is the cry of separation, the sound of being cut from the reed bed, longing to return. Our human songs of love and desire are the same. They are cries born from separation, songs that remind us of our origin. The beauty of music, of poetry, of romance, is that each carries the vibration of this truth. When we are moved by a melody or a poem, what we are really feeling is recognition, the soul recognizing its own language. Think, then, of your own experiences of love, the moments when you felt your heart alive with longing, whether fulfilled or unfulfilled. Rumi would say, do not run from these feelings. Do not dismiss them as weakness or curse them as pain. They are the path itself. They are the language by which the beloved speaks. The mistakes we make in love, the stumbles and heartbreaks, are not wasted. They are part of the journey, part of the learning, part of the refining of the soul into something capable of greater love. Rumi often told the story of Majnun and Layla, the legendary lovers of Arabic and Persian tradition. Majnun was so consumed with love for Layla that he wandered mad, scribbling her name on walls, whispering to the wind, forgetting food, forgetting himself entirely. To most, Majnun seemed insane, but Rumi saw in his madness the mirror of divine longing. For what is the soul if not a Majnun, whispering endlessly for its Layla, the beloved, who is hidden, yet always near? What looks like madness to the world may, in fact, be the deepest sanity of all. As you drift in this story, let Rumi's vision soften your own heart. Love, in all its forms, is not something separate from the spiritual path. It is the path. Every bond, every attachment, every grief is a thread woven into the tapestry of your return to the beloved. And even when you feel alone, even when love seems far, Rumi reminds you that longing itself is a companion. To ache is to be alive. To miss is to be connected. What you seek is indeed seeking you. And so, in the language of love, Rumi offers not only poetry, but a way of seeing. To see every embrace as holy, every kiss as divine, every heartbreak as a doorway. To see your own heart not as fragile, but as vast, capable of carrying the infinite. Love is the lesson, the test, the joy, the wound, and the healing. It is everything. And when you surrender to it, you discover that you are not merely loving, but being loved by the very heart of existence. There is a point in every journey of the soul where words begin to fall away. The intellect grows weary, and the chatter of the mind can no longer satisfy. In these moments, silence appears not as emptiness, but as a presence. For Rumi, silence was not the absence of speech, but the foundation of all true wisdom. The words he wrote, the poems he spun, the music of his verses, all of them emerged from the well of silence. He often said that the most important truths cannot be spoken. Words, no matter how beautiful, are always a translation, a shadow, an echo. The real essence lies beyond. Silence, he whispered, is the language of God. All else is a poor translation. To sit in silence, then, was not a failure of speech, but a doorway into direct communion with the divine. It was in silence that the soul could listen, could breathe, could receive what the tongue could never describe. Imagine Rumi in his gatherings. People would gather in Konya to hear him teach, to watch the dervishes whirl, to listen to his voice. And yet, often, he would fall silent in the middle of his teaching. The silence itself became the lesson. In that stillness, the listeners felt something stir in their own hearts, something no words could awaken. It was as if silence was a mirror, showing them their own depth, their own hidden well of wisdom. Silence is not easy for us. The human mind fears quiet. It rushes to fill the space with thoughts, words, noise. We reach for music, for conversation, for distraction, anything to avoid the vastness of stillness. Yet Rumi reminds us that it is in this vastness that we finally hear the subtle voice we have been chasing all along. The whispers of the soul are drowned out by noise. Only when we dare to sit quietly do they emerge. Rumi's silence was not passive. It was alive, charged, like the pause in music that makes the next note luminous. He knew that silence has a rhythm, a texture, a taste. The mystics of his time believed that creation itself was born from silence, that before the divine word, be, there was the silence of pure being. To return to silence is to return to that origin. To listen to silence is to listen to the breath of the universe itself. In his poetry, he sometimes scolds his own words, telling them they can never capture the truth, that they are clumsy messengers. Be quiet, he urges himself. The real music is not played on instruments. And yet he continued to write, because even broken words can point toward silence. The paradox is that he spoke in order to lead us into silence, just as a song can carry us into stillness when it ends. Consider for a moment how silence teaches. When you sit quietly, the world reveals itself differently. The sound of your breath becomes noticeable. The beating of your heart becomes a companion. The rustling of leaves outside feels like a message. The boundary between you and the world grows thin. You discover that silence is not emptiness, but fullness, overflowing with presence. Rumi taught that wisdom is born in this fullness. Arguments may sharpen the intellect, but only silence softens the heart enough to receive truth. Silence is like fertile soil. Words are seeds, but without silence, they cannot grow. This is why his gatherings were as much about stillness as about speech. To whirl in dance, to chant the names of God, and then to rest in silence. This rhythm carried seekers beyond the reach of ordinary thought into the heart of mystery. And so tonight, as you lie here, notice the silence around you, the way it stretches, like an ocean, without waves. Notice the silence within you, between each thought, beneath each breath. That silence is not empty. It is alive. It is the very ground of your being. The same silence that Rumi sat in. The same silence that has always been, and will always be. Silence, he taught, is the root of wisdom because it humbles us. It strips away our illusions of control, our endless need to define and explain. It teaches us to listen rather than to speak, to receive rather than to demand. In silence, we learn that we are not the masters of truth, but its guests. We are not the composers of wisdom, but its instruments. So much of Rumi's wisdom can be traced back to this simple truth. Sit in silence, and you will know. Words may lead you there, but only silence can reveal. And in this silence, as you drift deeper into rest, you might feel something stir within you. Not a thought, not a sound, but a presence. The same presence that Rumi called the beloved. The same presence that holds you now, in stillness, in quiet, in peace. In the opening lines of Rumi's most famous work, the Masnavi, he begins not with an argument, nor a story, nor even an instruction. He begins with the sound of a reed flute, the ney. Listen, he says, to the reed flute, how it complains, telling a tale of separations. This sound, this cry, is the heart of his philosophy, and perhaps the simplest way to enter his vision of life. The reed flute, cut from its bed, hollowed and fashioned into an instrument, carries a song of longing. Its music is born from the absence of what it once knew, from its severance, from the reed bed where it swayed with others in the wind. Now it sings, not with joy, but with yearning, a cry that mirrors the human soul itself. For Rumi, the knee was not simply an instrument. It was the most perfect metaphor for the human condition. Just as the reed is cut away from its source, so too is the soul separated from the divine. Just as the flute is hollowed to allow the breath of the musician to create music, so too must the human heart be emptied of ego and pride, so that the breath of God may pass through it. And just as the flute's music is mournful, trembling with the ache of loss, so too is human life, a song of longing, each note a reminder of what we once knew but have forgotten. Imagine, if you will, a gathering in Rumi's time. The night is cool, and lanterns glow against the walls of a courtyard. A circle of seekers sits cross-legged on carpets, and in the center, a musician lifts the knee to his lips. The first sound that emerges is not loud or forceful. It is thin, wavering, almost fragile, and yet it pierces the heart. Those who listen find tears welling in their eyes, though they cannot explain why. Something in the flute's cry speaks to them directly, bypassing words, touching a wound that is both ancient and fresh. This is the power of the knee. Its sound is the soul recognizing itself. The reed flute's cry is not only music, it is memory. Rumi suggests that deep inside, we remember what it was like to be with the beloved, in unity with the divine. We may not be able to articulate this memory, but it lives in us as longing. We hear the cry of the flute, and something stirs, a homesickness, not for a place on earth, but for a reality beyond time. The flute reminds us of what we have lost and, at the same time, of what still calls to us. Rumi's genius was to use this image to explain the spiritual path. To become like the reed flute, one must be willing to be hollowed out. The ego, with its endless demands, must be carved away. Pride, anger, selfishness, these are the knots that prevent the music from flowing. Only when the reed is emptied can the breath move through it. Only when the heart is cleared of its illusions can the breath of the beloved play its song. Thus, our suffering, our losses, our emptiness are not accidents. They are the very shaping of the instrument. Every wound carves us into greater openness. Every loss makes us more hollow, and every hollow space allows for more music. The knee's song, then, is not just about pain. It is about transformation. The sorrow of separation becomes the beauty of music. The pain of longing becomes the richness of poetry. What could be more human than this? That we turn our grief into art, our wounds into wisdom, our yearning into prayer. Rumi tells us that to be human is to be an instrument of divine music, fashioned by separation, played by the breath of the unseen. Think of your own life as a flute. Perhaps there are moments you wish to remain whole and untouched, moments when the carving of loss felt unbearable. And yet, if you listen closely, you might hear that those very hollows are the places where the music of your life emerges. The grief you carry has taught you compassion. The longing in your heart has given depth to your love. The silence within you has opened a space for wisdom. You, too, are a reed flute, and your cry is not weakness. It is your song. In the stillness of night, Rumi would listen to the knee and hear not just music, but a sermon. Each note preached of separation and return, of emptiness and fulfillment, of sorrow transformed into beauty. The flute was his teacher, reminding him and reminding us that the ache of life is not to be avoided but embraced. It is in the ache that the beloved breathes, creating music out of our hollowed hearts. So tonight, as you rest, imagine that you can hear the faint sound of a reed flute. Let its cry mingle with your own memories, your own longings. Feel how the sound does not judge or demand, but simply expresses. It is enough to listen. It is enough to let the song of separation remind you that you are part of something vast and mysterious. Like the reed flute, your longing is holy. Like the reed flute, you are shaped by loss, yet filled with the possibility of divine music. Listen, then, to your own soul's song. And as you drift into sleep, may the cry of the flute carry you gently back toward the home you have always sought. If the reed flute teaches us about separation, then the entire philosophy of Rumi teaches us about union. These two forces, union and separation, are the great currents of existence, pulling us back and forth like the ebb and flow of the tide. For Rumi, every human experience can be traced to this rhythm. When we fall in love, when we long for someone, when we feel the sweetness of intimacy or the bitterness of loss, we are enacting on a small scale the cosmic drama of union and separation between the soul and the beloved. At the heart of Rumi's vision lies this paradox. We are never truly apart from the divine, and yet we feel as if we are. The beloved is closer to us than our own breath. Yet we spend our lives searching, longing, aching to return. This ache is not an illusion to be dismissed. It is the very evidence of love. Without separation, there could be no longing. And without longing, there could be no joy of reunion. Rumi compared the soul to a drop of water, yearning for the ocean. The drop contains within it all the qualities of the sea, yet it feels small, fragile, vulnerable to evaporation. Only in returning to the ocean does it find its true identity. And so, with us, each soul carries the essence of the divine, yet feels cut off, isolated, searching. Life, with all its joys and sorrows, is the journey of this drop, returning home. Union, however, is not simply a future promise. It is also present in every moment. Every taste of beauty, every experience of love, every quiet joy is a flash of union, a glimpse of what has always been true. When you gaze at the stars and feel wonder, that wonder is union. When you hold someone you love and feel the boundaries between you dissolve, that dissolving is union. When you sit in silence and feel peace spreading through you, that peace is union. These are the moments when the veil of separation lifts and the soul remembers. But Rumi also knew the necessity of separation. Without the ache, without the hunger, we would not seek. Without the longing, we would not grow. Separation sharpens our desire, deepens our yearning, and makes union all the sweeter. This is why he welcomed suffering, not as punishment, but as invitation. Pain is the sign that love is real. Loss is the proof that we have tasted union. The heart that aches is the heart that knows what it is missing. Rumi told stories to illustrate this truth. He spoke of lovers who endured years of separation, only to discover that their longing had refined them, purified their hearts, so that when they finally met, their love was deeper and more enduring than before. He compared the soul's journey to a moth circling the flame, risking everything for the chance to be consumed. To the moth, the fire is death, and yet it is also union, the end of separation, the return to light. To live with this awareness is to see every moment differently. When you are with those you love, savor it as union. When you are apart, allow the longing to refine you. When you suffer, remember that the ache is holy, for it draws you closer. And when you find joy, do not cling, but let it remind you of the eternal joy that is always present beneath the changing tides. Union and separation are not opposites but partners in the dance of the soul. They weave together to create the melody of life. Just as day follows night and spring follows winter, so too does union follow separation, and separation deepen union. To accept this rhythm is to make peace with life itself, to stop fighting the currents and instead let them carry you toward the ocean of love. Tonight, as you lie here, you may feel the ache of separation in your own heart. Perhaps you miss someone. Perhaps you yearn for a peace you cannot name. Rumi would tell you not to push these feelings away. Instead, cradle them gently, as signs of love. Your longing is the thread connecting you to the beloved. Your separation is the proof that union is real. And as you rest, imagine yourself as a drop returning to the sea, dissolving gently, finding at last that you were never truly apart. There is a phrase attributed to Rumi that has traveled across centuries, finding its way into countless hearts. It is simple, yet it carries an almost bottomless depth. What you seek is seeking you. At first glance, it sounds like comfort, like a gentle reassurance whispered into the ear of someone who has grown tired of searching. But to sit with it longer is to realize that this is not just a pretty saying. It is a profound philosophy about the nature of desire, the mystery of longing, and the hidden truth of the universe itself. We spend our lives seeking. Some of us seek love, hoping for companionship to ease the loneliness of our days. Some seek meaning, searching in books, in teachings, in prayers, for a sense that life has a purpose. Others seek beauty, knowledge, success, or peace. Beneath all these different pursuits is the same restless hunger, the same ache of the heart. We imagine that what we seek lies outside us, hidden in the world, waiting to be discovered. But Rumi turns this search on its head. He tells us that what we are seeking is not only out there, it is also moving toward us. Our longing is not one-sided. It is a dialogue. This is why the line is so revolutionary. It suggests that the very thing you ache for is not indifferent. It is alive. It is aware. It is drawn to you with the same intensity that you are drawn to it. If you seek love, then love itself is seeking you. If you seek God, then God is already reaching for you. If you seek truth, then truth is not hiding. It is calling your name. What you desire most deeply is not a random accident of the mind, but a signpost pointing to a deeper reality, a reflection of a longing that exists within the heart of existence itself. Rumi believed that our desires are not meaningless. They are echoes. Just as the cry of the reed flute reminds us of its origin, so too does the ache of the human soul remind us of its source. To want, to yearn, to dream. These are not flaws of human weakness. They are signals that something greater is moving beneath the surface, shaping the course of our lives. In this way, longing is not a burden, but a gift. It is the evidence that we are in relationship with the infinite, that we are not wandering alone, but are being drawn, magnetized, and sought. Consider the experience of falling in love. You are drawn toward another, captivated by their presence, their voice, their being. You imagine that you alone are reaching out, that you alone are moved by this fire. And yet, if love is true, you discover that they too are reaching back, that the pull is mutual. Rumi extends this truth to the deepest love of all, the love between the soul and the beloved. You are not the only seeker. You are also being sought. This idea transforms the way we experience longing. Instead of treating desire as a problem to be solved, Rumi encourages us to see it as a thread pulling us toward union. Your yearning for truth is not proof of absence, but of presence. Your hunger for meaning is not emptiness, but fullness in disguise. The ache itself is holy because it carries within it the whisper of the beloved's call. Every time your heart reaches outward, something beyond you is also reaching inward. And what does this mean for those who feel lost, who feel that their prayers go unanswered, that their searching has led only to silence? For them, Rumi's words offer perhaps the greatest comfort. If what you seek is truly seeking you, then no search is wasted. No cry goes unheard. The silence itself is not emptiness, but preparation. The quiet before the meeting. The space where two longings move closer together. Think for a moment of the countless people across time who have whispered this line to themselves in moments of despair. A wanderer in the desert, a student staring into the night sky, a widow grieving by the graveside, a child wondering at the stars. Each one believes themselves to be reaching outward, but Rumi would tell them, the stars are also reaching for you. The beloved is already nearer than your own breath. What you seek has never been far, for it has been moving toward you since before you began your search. To live with this awareness is to soften. It is to trust the hidden order of things, the doors that close, the detours that confuse, the delays that frustrate. All of them become part of the dance between seeker and sought. The ache in your chest is no longer something to be cured, but something to be honored. It is the sign that you are being drawn into a greater story than you can imagine. So tonight, as you listen in the quiet, let yourself reflect on your own seeking. What has your heart longed for most deeply? What dream returns again and again? What yearning lives beneath your thoughts? Whatever it is, Rumi whispers that it is not only you who longs. That dream longs for you as well. That truth wants to be found. That love is calling back. You are not chasing shadows. You are in dialogue with the universe. And the conversation has been going on since before you were born. As you breathe slowly and let your body grow heavy, imagine your seeking as a light shining outward into the dark. And now imagine that in the darkness another light is moving toward you, seeking you with equal tenderness. The two lights are destined to meet. Perhaps not tonight, perhaps not tomorrow, but always in time. For what you seek is already seeking you, and the longing you feel is the proof of that secret union. Trust it. Rest in it. Let it carry you into sleep. Among Rumi's many metaphors, one of the most striking is his image of the tavern. In his poetry, he often invites us to enter the tavern of truth, a place overflowing with wine and music, a place where seekers gather not to escape reality, but to taste it more fully. At first, the image might seem surprising. Rumi lived in a world where spiritual discipline and religious devotion were highly valued. Why would a mystic speak of taverns and wine, of intoxication and surrender? But for Rumi, these images were not about literal drink. They were about the ecstasy of the soul, in union with the beloved. In the tavern of truth, the wine is divine love. It is not poured into glasses, but into hearts. To drink of it is to lose yourself, to let go of control, to surrender the careful boundaries of the ego. This intoxication is not the dullness of forgetting, but the sharp clarity of remembering. The drunkard Rumi describes is not stumbling in confusion, but whirling in joy, seeing the world afresh, stripped of illusion. In the tavern of truth, you do not drink to escape life. You drink to taste its essence, to dissolve into the mystery that is always present, but often hidden by the sober mind. The tavern is also a place of radical equality. In the world outside, hierarchies and divisions rule: scholar and student, rich and poor, saint and sinner. But in the tavern, all are welcome. The wine of love does not discriminate. It flows for everyone who dares to surrender, to put aside pride, to let the heart be filled. This is why Rumi speaks of the tavern with such joy. It is the one place where pretenses dissolve, where the masks we wear fall away, and where every soul is drunk on the same truth. Surrender, in this sense, is the essence of the tavern. To enter is to lay down the armor of self, the endless attempts to control and define. The ego fears this surrender because it feels like death. And yet, for Rumi, it is the only way to truly live. To be drunk on divine love is to finally be free, free of fear, free of separation, free of the endless weight of self-consciousness. In intoxication, you are not less yourself, but more. You become the purest expression of your soul, unbound, unmeasured, flowing with the rhythm of the universe. The whirling dance of the dervishes can be seen as a kind of tavern ritual. The spinning is not chaos but surrender, letting go of balance, letting the body become drunk on motion until it no longer belongs to the self but to the dance itself. In this way, the tavern is not a physical place but a state of being, entered whenever we let go of control and allow love to sweep us away. Rumi also uses the tavern to teach us about humility. Those who cling to rules and appearances may scoff at the drunkard. But in Rumi's vision, the drunkard is closer to truth than the self-righteous. The one who stumbles into the tavern in desperation, broken and thirsty, is often the one who drinks most deeply. For it is not our strength that opens us to love, but our weakness, not our perfection, but our need. In this way, the tavern becomes the great equalizer, where kings and beggars sit side by side, cups raised, all of them consumed by the same fire. To enter the tavern of truth in your own life is to allow yourself to be overwhelmed by love. It is to stop resisting, to stop calculating, and to let yourself be carried. It is to allow beauty to intoxicate you, to allow music to move you, to allow silence to dissolve you. It is to trust that surrender is not defeat, but arrival. Tonight, as you lie here, you may imagine yourself walking into such a tavern. The lamps glow with a golden light. Music drifts through the air. The cups are already filled, waiting for you. There is no judgment here, no exclusion, no need to prove yourself. The only requirement is thirst. And you are thirsty, you always have been. You lift the cup, and as you drink, you feel your defenses dissolve. The worries of the day slip away. The heaviness of your mind grows lighter. You are drunk, but not on forgetfulness. You are drunk on truth, drunk on love, drunk on the presence that holds you in every moment. This is the tavern of Rumi. This is the intoxication of the spirit. And as you surrender to it, you may find that sleep itself becomes a kind of intoxication, a dissolving of boundaries, a surrender into mystery. Let yourself drink deeply tonight. Let yourself be carried by the music, the silence, the love that surrounds you. For here, in the tavern of truth, you are already home. When most people hear the name of Rumi, they think not only of his poetry, but also of the sight of the whirling dervishes, the mystical dancers who spin endlessly in long white garments beneath tall felt hats. It is a mesmerizing vision, robes billowing like wings, arms open as if embracing the heavens, eyes half closed in serene surrender. For many, it is a spectacle of art and beauty. But to understand it as Rumi understood it, you must look deeper. This dance is not entertainment. It is philosophy made flesh. It is prayer given movement. It is the soul spinning its way into the orbit of the divine. The whirling ceremony, known as the Sema, was born from Rumi's own inspiration. It is said that one afternoon, while walking through the marketplace, he heard the rhythmic hammering of the goldsmith's hammers. The sound struck him not as noise but as music, a hidden rhythm echoing the pulse of the universe. Overcome with joy, Rumi began to whirl in the street. His body swept into motion by the revelation that everything, every sound, every movement, every breath was part of a greater symphony. From this moment, the practice of whirling became a sacred ritual for his followers, a way of entering into the same state of ecstatic remembrance. The dance begins in silence, with the dervishes dressed in long black cloaks. These cloaks represent the tomb, the heaviness of the ego, the coverings that conceal the soul's radiance. As the music begins, the dervishes remove the cloaks, revealing white garments beneath. This is a gesture of rebirth, of resurrection from the death of the ego into the life of the spirit. The tall, conical hat they wear represents the tombstone of the self, a reminder that the ego must die for the soul to live freely. Then the whirling begins. Slowly at first, Then with increasing rhythm, the dervishes spin counterclockwise, always turning toward the heart. Their right hand lifts upward, palm open to receive blessings from the heavens. Their left hand extends downward, palm facing the earth, to deliver those blessings into the world. They become living conduits, channels of divine grace, standing neither above nor below creation, but at the center, where heaven and earth meet. The philosophy of the dance is profound. In whirling, the dervish imitates the motion of the planets, each spinning in its orbit around the Sunday. This is no random comparison. In Rumi's world, the entire cosmos is engaged in a constant dance of devotion. The stars circle in praise. The planets move in obedience to unseen laws. Even the blood within the body, even the atoms within the flesh, are spinning ceaselessly. To whirl is to join this cosmic dance, to remember one's place in the greater order, to participate consciously in the motion that is always happening. Yet, there is more. The whirling is also a practice of annihilation. As the dervish spins, the sense of self begins to dissolve. Boundaries blur. The dancer loses track of where their body ends and where the air begins. In the dizziness, the ego loosens its grip, and the soul feels itself as part of something larger. The world itself seems to blur, and what remains is not the individual, but the presence that holds everything together. In this way, whirling becomes a meditation in motion, a path toward union through surrender. There is also discipline in this ecstasy. To whirl for hours requires focus, balance, breath. The dervish does not collapse into chaos, but enters into harmony. The music, the rhythm, the measured spinning, all of it demands awareness. The paradox is that the whirling is both a letting go and a holding steady. The body surrenders to the motion, yet the heart remains anchored. In this paradox, the philosophy of Rumi comes alive. Freedom through discipline, ecstasy through surrender, unity through movement. For Rumi, the whirling was not about leaving the world behind, but about entering it more fully. The dervish does not close their eyes to escape reality. They half close them to soften the illusion of separateness. The dance is not about reaching some distant heaven, but about discovering that heaven is already present, that the ground beneath the feet is holy, that the air spinning through the lungs is divine breath. Imagine yourself now as a dervish. The room is filled with soft music, the sound of the reed flute rising and falling, the deep beat of the drum marking the passage of time. You step slowly, shedding the cloak of your burdens, the heaviness of your thoughts. You begin to spin, your arms opening, your heart loosening. At first the motion is strange, but then it becomes natural. The world blurs, but instead of confusion, there is peace. You feel yourself as part of something vast, something timeless. You are not spinning, you are being spun. The dance is carrying you, just as the stars are carried in their orbits, just as the planets are carried around the Sunday. This is the dance of the dervishes, a living philosophy that says, do not fear the spinning of your life. Do not resist the motion of existence. Let yourself whirl. Let yourself surrender. Let yourself be carried into union with the mystery that holds all things. For in the turning, you will discover that you are not lost, you are at home, circling endlessly around the sun of love. If Rumi spoke often of wine and intoxication, he spoke just as often of fire. Fire is one of his most enduring symbols, and for him, it was not only a force of destruction, but also of transformation. He believed that the human soul, like raw metal, must be placed in the furnace of longing to be refined. Without fire, gold remains hidden in ore, and the spirit remains trapped within the hardness of the ego. With fire, the impurities are burned away, and the pure essence shines forth. Desire, for Rumi, is fire. It is the burning within the chest that drives us toward the beloved, the hunger that refuses to be silenced. Many traditions treat desire with suspicion, as something to be overcome or extinguished. But Rumi takes a different view. He sees desire not as an obstacle, but as a doorway. To feel the fire of longing is to be alive. It is evidence that the soul has awakened, that it knows it is incomplete without reunion with its source. Think of how fire works. It consumes what is unnecessary. It reduces the false to ash. But it also gives warmth, light, and energy. In the same way, longing consumes illusions. It burns away complacency, self-satisfaction, pride. It leaves behind humility, tenderness, and openness. It ignites creativity, devotion, and passion. In the furnace of desire, the soul learns what matters and what does not. Rumi often compares this process to the moth and the flame. The moth, drawn irresistibly to the light, circles closer and closer until it is consumed. At first, this seems tragic, but Rumi insists that this is the highest form of love, to give oneself completely, to burn in the fire of the beloved until nothing remains but light. To be consumed by divine love is not death but fulfillment. The moth has not perished, it has become one with the flame. In our own lives, we can feel this fire in many ways. It may come as the restlessness that drives us to search for truth. It may come as the ache of unfulfilled love, reminding us that we are made for more than isolation. It may come as the deep sorrow that strips us bare, forcing us to let go of what cannot last. Each flame, painful though it may be, is also a gift. For it is in the burning that we are transformed. Rumi does not romanticize suffering. He does not say that pain is good in itself, but he insists that it can be used. The fire of grief, for example, can either consume us in despair or refine us into deeper compassion. The fire of failure can either harden us into bitterness or soften us into wisdom. The fire of longing can either frustrate us into restlessness or guide us into devotion. What matters is how we meet the flame. If we resist it, we are scorched. If we embrace it, we are transformed. In one of his poems, Rumi writes, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even the burning ones, for each has been sent by the beloved as a teacher." To him, the fire is not punishment but instruction. It is the teacher that shows us where we are still clinging, still afraid, still unready to let go. And through that burning, we learn the art of surrender. Consider the blacksmith at his forge. He places rough metal into the furnace, then hammers it again and again. Sparks fly. The heat is intense. The noise is overwhelming. And yet, from this process, something strong and beautiful emerges: a sword, a tool, a work of art. The soul is like this. Without fire, it remains heavy and dull. With fire, it becomes sharp, luminous, purposeful. And so, Rumi invites us to welcome our longing rather than fear it, to see our burning not as a curse, but as the very path of transformation. The ache in your chest is not a flaw, it is the sign that you are being shaped. The fire you feel is not your enemy, it is your teacher. And when you allow yourself to be refined by it, you emerge, not diminished, but radiant, closer to the essence that has always been within you. Tonight, as you drift toward sleep, you may feel your own fires, the restless thoughts, the unfulfilled desires, the memories that burn. Let them be, Do not push them away. Imagine them as the forge in which your soul is being shaped. The flames are not here to harm you. They are here to refine you. You are gold, hidden in stone, and the fire is revealing your brilliance. Trust it. Let it work. And as the fire burns, let it soften into warmth, carrying you gently into rest. In the quiet hours of the night, when the noise of the world grows faint and only the pulse of your own breathing remains, the question of companionship arises. We are never entirely alone. Even in solitude, within us there is a constant dialogue, the mind whispering, the heart aching, the spirit yearning. Rumi understood this deeply. For him, companionship was not merely the comfort of company, it was the meeting of souls in their shared search for truth. Rumi lived in a world where friendship was not casual. To call someone a friend was to recognize them as a mirror, a guide, perhaps even a doorway to God. He believed that human relationships were vessels through which divine light could pour, if only one was willing to see beyond appearances. When he spoke of friends, he did not speak only of laughter shared or meals eaten together. He spoke of something deeper, the way one soul can awaken another, the way love can draw us toward the beloved. The most powerful example in his life was his companionship with Shams of Tabriz. Their meeting was not simply a friendship, it was an alchemical fire that transformed Rumi from a scholar into a poet, aflame with divine love. Shams was not there to flatter Rumi or agree with him. He was there to challenge him, to strip away layers of pride, to demand that he plunge headfirst into the sea of love. In Shams, Rumi found both a friend and a teacher, someone who was willing to unsettle him for the sake of awakening him. It was not always pleasant, but it was profoundly necessary. This is what Rumi means when he writes that a true friend is like a polish for the heart. The heart, left alone, gathers dust. It becomes cloudy, heavy, unable to reflect the light of truth. But a friend who speaks honestly, who listens deeply, who loves without pretense, polishes away the dust until the heart shines clear again. Such companionship is sacred because it does not let us remain asleep. It calls us to awaken. Again and again. Yet Rumi also reminds us that companionship is not limited to human beings. The soul finds friends in books, in music, in silence, even in the trials that shape our lives. Every teacher, he says, is a friend in disguise. Sometimes the friend comes as joy, sometimes as pain, sometimes as the laughter of a child, sometimes as the silence of a dark night. If you meet each with openness, each can serve as a guide. Each can polish the mirror of the heart. Seekers of truth, Rumi insists, are also companions to one another, even if they have never met. The moment you step on the path of longing, you are joined to countless others who are walking the same way. Across time and space, you share a kinship with those who are asking the same questions, bearing the same burdens, yearning for the same beloved. This invisible fellowship can be felt in the lines of poetry that still speak across centuries, in the prayers of strangers uttered in distant lands, in the quiet recognition when you meet someone whose heart burns with the same fire. For Rumi, companionship is not about possession. It is about presence. To love someone is not to chain them to you, but to walk beside them as they find their own way. A true teacher does not demand worship, but invites you to discover your own light. A true friend does not demand perfection, but embraces you as you are, while encouraging you to become more. Companionship of the soul is not about clinging. It is about freeing. It is a reminder that our journeys are intertwined, even as each of us must walk our own path. Imagine, as you drift deeper into stillness, that you are seated in a circle of seekers. There is a quiet fire in the middle, casting warm light on each face. No one speaks loudly. No one argues. Instead, there is listening deep, tender, patient listening. You realize that each person here is carrying their own longing, their own wounds, their own hopes, and as you look into their eyes, you recognize yourself. This is companionship. It is not the erasing of differences, but the recognition of a shared essence, a shared search. Rumi would tell you, cherish such companionship. Seek it in friends. Seek it in teachers. Seek it in the strangers who cross your path. But also, seek it within. For the soul itself is your constant companion, whispering to you in dreams, nudging you in moments of quiet clarity, reminding you that you are never alone. The companionship of the soul is eternal, for it is the dialogue between the seeker and the sought, between the longing heart and the infinite beloved. And so, let this thought rest with you as you close your eyes. You are in the company of countless souls, all turning toward the same light. Their presence is with you, even now, as you breathe, as you rest. You are never alone on this path. You walk with friends, seen and unseen, with teachers disguised as moments, with seekers across the ages. Let this companionship cradle you as you drift into sleep. Rumi loved paradoxes. For him, truth was too vast to fit neatly into the boxes of logic. To approach the divine, one had to embrace contradiction, to allow the mind to soften, to admit that two opposites could both be true. His poetry is full of these strange juxtapositions. Silence that speaks louder than words, poverty that is greater than riches, death that is birth, longing that is fulfillment. These paradoxes are not riddles to be solved, but doorways to deeper awareness. Why did Rumi embrace contradiction so passionately? Because he saw that life itself is built on paradox. We are both body and soul, both fleeting and eternal, both dust and breath of God. To deny one side of the paradox is to deny reality itself. The human mind craves clarity, but the truth of existence is shimmering, fluid, full of opposites that coexist. For Rumi, wisdom begins when we stop trying to resolve paradoxes and start learning to live within them. One of his favorite paradoxes is the idea that the wound is where the light enters you. At first glance, pain seems only destructive. Wounds are weaknesses, reminders of our fragility. Yet, Rumi insists that it is through our very vulnerability that divine light can pour in. If we were flawless, sealed and whole, there would be no opening for grace. It is the cracks in the heart that let the light through. Thus, what feels like defeat may be the very doorway to healing. What feels like loss may be the seed of transformation. Another paradox Rumi delights in is the union of opposites. The lover and the beloved, the seeker and the sought, the cry and the answer. He reminds us that longing itself is proof of fulfillment. If you did not belong to something greater, you would not feel the ache to return to it. If you were not already connected to the beloved, you would not feel the yearning for union. Thus, the very absence you feel is a sign of presence. The emptiness is already full. Paradox also appears in his view of knowledge. He tells us that silence teaches more than speech, that unknowing is greater than knowing. For Rumi, the mind's desire to grasp and control must eventually give way to wonder. To know God is to admit that you cannot know God completely. To be wise is to embrace the mystery. The more you surrender the need for certainty, the more room you create for genuine insight to arise. These paradoxes are not meant to confuse but to calm. When you accept contradiction, the struggle ends. No longer must you force the world into rigid categories of right and wrong, light and dark, gain and loss. You begin to see that everything is interwoven, that opposites need one another. Joy is deeper because sorrow exists. Life is precious because death is certain. Love is vast because separation is possible. By embracing paradox, you fall into a gentler rhythm with the universe, one where tension becomes balance. Picture yourself standing at the edge of the sea at twilight. The day has not ended, and yet the night has not fully begun. The sky is both dark and light, both fading and rising. The waves advance and retreat, endless contradictions dancing together. In this in-between space, you feel both small and infinite. This is the spirit of Rumi's paradoxes, the recognition that life is not one thing or the other, but always both, always more, always beyond. As you drift into rest, consider the paradoxes in your own life, the moments that felt like endings, that were also beginnings, the heartbreaks that brought new love, the failures that taught more than success. These contradictions are not mistakes. They are the texture of being human. To embrace them is to live more fully, to stop fighting the tides of existence, and to begin floating with them. Rumi whispers to you even now, do not fear contradiction. Let it rock you gently, like waves carrying you into sleep. In the heart of paradox lies peace, and in peace you may finally rest. Rumi often spoke of mirrors, not the kind that hang upon walls, made of polished glass and silver backing, but the living mirrors found in the faces of others. For him, every relationship was a reflection. Every friend, every rival, every passing stranger, a polished surface showing us what lies within ourselves. To look into another person, to truly look, was to glimpse something of our own hidden essence, as if the beloved had scattered fragments of our soul across creation and invited us to gather them back. Imagine the heart as a mirror. Left untended, it grows dull, covered by the dust of habits, fears, and pride. Alone, we can polish it only so much. But when we encounter another soul, something happens. Their presence rubs against our own, and in that friction, clarity emerges. Sometimes the reflection they show us is radiant qualities we admire, love, and long for. Other times the reflection is uncomfortable shadows we would rather deny, wounds we would rather ignore. Both, Rumi insists, are gifts from the beloved. Both are necessary if we are to awaken. He once wrote, "If you are irritated by every rub, how will you be polished?" This simple line contains an entire philosophy. The people who test us, who challenge us, who even wound us, are mirrors no less than those who uplift and inspire. They show us where we are still fragile, where our patience falters, where our compassion runs thin. To be polished is not always comfortable, but the mirror grows clearer with every touch. In this way, others are not obstacles on the path, but essential companions, each carrying a piece of our unfinished self. Rumi's bond with Shams of Tabriz is perhaps the greatest example. Shams was not gentle. He did not flatter or soothe. He held up a mirror so unflinching that Rumi could not turn away. In Shams, Rumi saw the fierce demand of truth, the uncompromising fire of love. It was not easy to face. Yet in that mirror, Rumi discovered his own depths, his own capacity for transformation. What began as a reflection became a revelation. He saw not just himself, but the face of the beloved shining through. And yet, Rumi reminds us, mirrors are not limited to teachers or saints. The child who laughs innocently shows us the mirror of purity still alive within us. The beggar at the roadside reflects our own hunger, our own need for grace. Even the enemy mirrors our anger, our pride, our fear of vulnerability. If we dare to look, every encounter is a chance to know ourselves more fully. In this way, the world itself becomes a mirror, endlessly reflecting the hidden truths of the soul. It is easy to admire the pleasant reflections, the kindness, the beauty, the love. But the deeper invitation lies in the shadows. When someone provokes anger in you, Rumi says, pause and ask, what is this mirror showing me about myself? When jealousy arises, when resentment flares, when fear takes hold, look more closely. Often, it is not the other person but your own unacknowledged wounds being reflected back. To see this without judgment, to thank the mirror even when it hurts, is to walk the path of wisdom. Rumi's poetry urges us to embrace these reflections with humility. He tells us that the beloved uses every mirror to draw us closer. Sometimes the reflection is radiant, reminding us of the divine beauty we already carry. Sometimes it is harsh, stripping away illusions, forcing us to confront what we hide. But always, the purpose is love. Always, the mirror is an instrument of remembrance. Think for a moment of those who have entered your life and changed you, even in small ways. The teacher who believed in you when you doubted yourself. The friend whose honesty stung but saved you from a mistake. The lover who broke your heart, only to awaken in you a depth of compassion you did not know you had. Each was a mirror, showing you not only who they were, but who you were, who you could become. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine yourself walking through a great hall lined with mirrors. Some mirrors are clear and flattering, reflecting your best qualities. Others are cracked, distorted, uncomfortable to gaze into. Yet each one is part of you. Each one reveals a piece of the truth. Walk slowly through this hall, thanking each reflection, for in their light and in their shadow, you are being shown the face of the beloved, the infinite truth that waits within and beyond. And so, Rumi whispers across centuries, look into the eyes of others as if they were mirrors. Do not turn away when they reveal what is difficult. Do not cling only to the pleasing images. Receive them all, for in each reflection, the beloved is calling you home. In Rumi's poetry, paradise is not some faraway realm waiting beyond death. It is here, woven into the fabric of this world, hidden in the rustling of leaves, in the fragrance of roses, in the laughter that bursts forth unexpectedly. He often described life as a garden, vast and eternal, where every flower and every tree whispered of divine beauty. To walk through this garden, with open eyes and an awakened heart, was to taste paradise while still alive. The Quranic vision of paradise often speaks in imagery of gardens, rivers flowing beneath, fruits abundant, shade eternal. Rumi embraced this imagery, but reimagined it as something more immediate, more intimate. For him, the infinite garden was not just a promise for the afterlife, but a reality unfolding in every moment for those who knew how to see. Every rose, he said, carries the fragrance of God. Every breeze is a caress from the beloved. Every dawn is the gate to Eden reopened. To Rumi, the garden was not only external, but internal. Within the soul lies a field of infinite possibility, a soil where seeds of love, compassion, and wisdom wait to be watered. When tended, this inner garden blooms with beauty beyond measure. When neglected, it grows tangled, overrun with weeds of fear and doubt. Paradise, then, is not simply a place we enter, but a state we cultivate, both in the world around us and in the soil of the heart. He tells us, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right-doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. This field is no ordinary meadow. It is the boundless garden of spirit, where divisions dissolve, where love flows without hindrance. It is a vision of paradise not as rigid reward, but as expansiveness, a limitless embrace of beauty and truth. For Rumi, beauty itself was a form of worship. To admire a rose was to glimpse the artistry of the divine. To taste ripe fruit was to savor a sweetness gifted by the beloved. To sit beneath a tree and listen to its leaves was to hear scripture written in green. He urged his followers not to wait for another life, to appreciate paradise, but to awaken to the infinite garden already blooming around them. Every breath, every step, every sensation was part of this living Eden. The infinite garden is also a place of healing. Rumi wrote often of flowers as physicians for the weary heart, of water as balm for the soul. When sorrow weighs heavy, he suggests, step into the garden, whether a real one or the garden of imagination, and let the colors and scents remind you that beauty endures, even in the face of suffering. Just as winter gives way to spring, grief gives way to joy. The garden is a teacher of cycles, a reminder that loss and renewal are woven into the fabric of existence. This vision was not mere poetry. In Rumi's time, gatherings of seekers often took place in gardens, where poetry was recited beneath trees, where music mingled with birdsong, where the night sky itself seemed to listen. To gather in a garden was to align with the natural rhythm of creation, to remember that the earth itself is a sanctuary. In such settings, the infinite garden was not a metaphor, but a lived experience, an atmosphere where souls could breathe more freely. Tonight, as you settle into rest, imagine yourself walking into such a garden. The air is cool, scented with jasmine and rose. The path beneath your feet is soft with moss. Around you, trees whisper with the breeze, and the stars above shine like lanterns hung in a vast canopy. Everywhere you look, there is beauty delicate, abundant, overflowing. You feel your heart expand, as if you have stepped into a realm beyond time. This is the infinite garden, and it is open to you now, not as a distant promise, but as a present reality. Rumi would say, do not wait for another life to enter paradise. Enter it here, in this breath, in this moment. For the infinite garden is all around you and within you, waiting to be seen, waiting to be tended, waiting to embrace you. For Rumi, the metaphor of the ocean was more than imagery. It was the clearest way he could describe the mystery of existence. He would remind us that each of us is like a drop of water, small and seemingly separate, tossed about by winds, lifted by clouds, or fallen into rivers. And yet, every drop comes from the same source. Every drop contains the essence of the ocean. And every drop, no matter how far it wanders, longs to return. When you look at a drop of water resting on a leaf, it seems complete in itself. But the moment it falls into the ocean, something remarkable happens. The drop loses its boundaries. It is no longer a small, fragile bead, glistening in the sunday. It becomes part of something vast, immeasurable, infinite. This is the image Rumi offers us of the soul's journey. The ego is the boundary of the drop, fragile, defined, insistent on its separateness. The ocean is the divine, endless and eternal. Our lives, with all their struggles and triumphs, are the story of the drop remembering it was never truly apart from the sea. The ego clings to its separateness, just as the drop resists dissolving. It wants to say, I am different. I am unique. I am my own. And in a sense, it is true. Each drop reflects light differently. Each drop travels a different path. Perhaps through storm, perhaps through stillness. Yet when the drop returns to the ocean, none of this is lost. Instead, it is embraced. The drop dissolves, but its essence is fulfilled, absorbed into the vastness it always belonged to. This dissolution is not annihilation. It is completion. The drop does not cease to exist. It becomes more than it ever was. In the same way, Rumi tells us, when we surrender the ego and allow ourselves to return to the divine, we do not lose ourselves. We find ourselves. We are no longer a fragile, separate bead trembling on the edge of a leaf. We are the ocean itself, moving in waves, rising in tides, limitless, free. Rumi's poetry is filled with this metaphor, urging us to let go of the fear of losing ourselves. He reminds us that separation is an illusion. The drop believes it is alone, but even in its loneliness, it is still water, still the essence of the sea. Even in our moments of deepest isolation, we carry the divine essence within us. The return to the ocean is not about becoming something new, but about realizing what we have always been. Think of how the ocean behaves. It receives rivers without complaint. It absorbs storms without losing itself. It reflects the moon and the stars, yet remains vast beyond measure. This, Rumi says, is what we are called to become, not rigid drops defending our boundaries, but the ocean itself, wide and open, embracing everything. The more we cling to the drop, the more fragile we feel. The more we remember we are the ocean, the freer we become. This vision also helps us to understand love. When two drops merge, they are no longer two, they are one. Love, in this way, is the rehearsal for union with the ocean. It teaches us to let go of our rigid boundaries, to dissolve into the joy of connection. When you love deeply, you forget yourself. You expand. You feel the presence of something greater flowing through you. Rumi tells us this is the same joy the soul feels when it dissolves into the beloved, when the drop returns to the sea. Imagine tonight that you are such a drop, trembling on the edge of return. You fear that if you fall, you will vanish. You fear the loss of your small identity. But then you leap, and the ocean receives you. You dissolve, and instead of nothingness, there is fullness. Instead of death, there is life. Instead of losing yourself, you have become the ocean, endless, eternal, vast. This is the destiny of every soul, and the ache we feel in life is simply the longing to return. Rumi tells us, do not resist. Do not cling to your boundaries. Let yourself fall. Let yourself dissolve. You are not meant to remain a drop. You are meant to be the sea. If the drop teaches us about unity, surrender teaches us how to return. For Rumi, surrender was not weakness. It was the most profound form of strength. To surrender was to trust the current of the ocean, to let go of fear, to allow love to carry us where we are meant to go. In a world full of striving, of clinging, of endless attempts to control, Rumi's invitation is simple and radical. Let go. The human mind loves control. It wants to plan, to manage, to predict. It fears uncertainty and clings to certainty. Yet life is not something we can hold tightly in our hands. It slips through our fingers like water, no matter how hard we grasp. Rumi saw this clearly. He wrote, "Try to accept the changing seasons of your heart, even if they make you shiver. Each has been sent by the Beloved as a guide. To surrender is to accept these seasons, to stop resisting the flow of life, and to trust that even in the coldest winter, the Beloved is present. This path is not passive resignation. It is not giving up. Rather, it is opening. When we surrender, we stop fighting the waves and begin floating with them. We stop trying to control the wind and begin adjusting our sails. We stop demanding that the world obey our desires and begin listening to the deeper desire that flows beneath everything, the desire of the Beloved to draw us closer. Rumi often compared surrender to falling in love. When love overtakes you, you do not control it. You do not calculate it. It sweeps you off your feet, reshapes your thoughts, makes you do things you never imagined. Love is, in itself, a surrender. You surrender your isolation, your certainty, your pride, and in return, you discover joy. The path of surrender to God, to the Beloved, is the same. It is to give yourself fully, without conditions, without fear, and to discover in that letting go a freedom greater than anything control could offer. But surrender is not always easy. The ego resists it fiercely. The mind whispers, "What if you lose everything? What if you are hurt? What if you vanish?" And yet, Rumi answers, the only way to find true safety is to let go of the illusion of control. What we cling to most tightly, possessions, relationships, even our own identities, are fragile. To surrender is to place them in the hands of grace, trusting that whatever is taken will be replaced by something deeper, something truer, something eternal. Rumi tells us that surrender is like falling into the arms of a trusted friend. At first there is fear. Will they catch me? Will they hold me? But then, as you are embraced, the fear dissolves. You realize you were never falling into emptiness. You were always falling into love. Grace has always been beneath you, waiting to hold you. Imagine, as you lie here, the weight of your day pressing on you, the thoughts of tomorrow, the regrets of yesterday. Each one is like a stone you are carrying in a sack upon your shoulders. The path of surrender is simply this: to set the sack down, to lay it at the feet of the Beloved, and to rest. The stones do not vanish, but you no longer bear their weight alone. Grace carries them with you. Grace carries you. In his poetry, Rumi often urged his readers, "Give up your drop and become the sea. Give up your tricks and be bewildered. Give up your cleverness and fall into wonder." This is surrender, to let go of cleverness, to stop pretending we have everything figured out, and to step into wonder. To surrender is to trust that the mystery is wiser than the mind, that love is stronger than fear, that grace is nearer than we imagine. As you drift into sleep, feel this surrender in your own body. With every exhale, let go a little more. Let go of the need to control. Let go of the need to know. Let go of the weight of worry. Trust that the Beloved is holding you. Even now, even here, you are not falling into emptiness. You are falling into love. You are falling into grace. And in that surrender, you are free. Every word Rumi ever wrote, every line that spilled from his lips, carried within it an invitation not only to listen, but also to fall quiet afterward. He knew that words could take us only so far. They could point, they could guide, they could stir, but they could not contain the fullness of truth. For that, silence was needed. And so, in the spaces after his poems, in the pauses between his teachings, lay a wisdom as profound as the words themselves. Silence is the womb of meaning. Before a poem arises, there is silence. After it falls away, there is silence. Words are like ripples across a vast lake. but the lake itself is silence, deep and still. Rumi understood this, which is why he often scolded his own tongue in his verses, telling it to stop, to step aside, to let the real teaching be carried in stillness. Silence, he wrote, is the language of God. All else is a poor translation. Think of how a poem lingers. You read the final line, and for a moment you do not move. You do not rush to turn the page. You simply sit there, suspended, the sound still resonating in your mind. That stillness after the poem is not empty, it is full. It is the moment when the heart begins to absorb what the mind cannot grasp. It is the space where meaning seeps inward, past the boundaries of intellect, into the quiet chambers of the soul. Rumi believed that the beloved speaks most clearly not in words, but in this stillness. The poem is only a doorway. The silence beyond it is the room itself. If we linger only in the words, we remain at the threshold. But if we step into silence, we cross into the presence the words were pointing toward. For this reason, his gatherings often contained long pauses. After the poems were recited, after the music of the reed flute faded, there was no rush to fill the air again. Instead, the listeners sat in quiet, letting the stillness do its work. It is not easy for us to rest in silence. The mind fidgets. The thoughts scramble to fill the gap. The tongue aches to speak. But Rumi assures us that if we can learn to stay, to dwell in the quiet after the poem, we will discover something more intimate than words. In silence, the beloved leans close. In silence, the soul remembers. Imagine yourself in such a gathering. You are seated on a carpet, surrounded by others, the night air warm, the stars glimmering faintly above. Rumi has just spoken a verse. The flute has just fallen silent. For a few moments, no one moves. The silence is alive, buzzing with presence, as if every heart in the circle has become one great ear listening for the same soundless voice. In that silence, something awakens in you. You feel at home. You feel whole. You feel nearer to the beloved than words could ever bring you. This is why Rumi urged his students not only to recite poetry, but to sit afterward in quiet. The poem is the spark. The silence is the flame. The poem is the invitation. The silence is the arrival. Without silence, the words remain on the surface. With silence, they sink deep, planting seeds that grow in the hidden soil of the heart. Think of your own life. How often words rush in to fill space. We fear pauses in conversation. We fill silence with noise. We avoid the stillness of our own rooms. Yet Rumi tells us that the most important things happen precisely there, in the pauses, in the listening, in the stillness after the poem. For in that stillness, something greater speaks. As you lie here, breathing softly, you may sense the silence within and around you. The words of Rumi have guided you, but now they too begin to fade. Do not fear this fading. This is the point. The poem was never meant to last forever. It was meant to usher you into this quiet. Here, in the silence after the poem, you are held, you are seen, you are spoken to, in a language beyond speech. Let yourself rest in that stillness. Let it fill you, soothe you, carry you. For silence is not absence. It is presence in its purest form. It is the beloved's breath, steady and infinite, holding you long after the words have ended. And now, the journey comes to its gentle end. The poems have been spoken. The images of gardens, oceans, flutes, and taverns have passed through your mind like drifting clouds. The story of Rumi, his companions, his longing, his joy, his paradoxes, All of it has led you here, to this quiet threshold, where night deepens and sleep draws near. As you lie here, you carry with you the traces of his voice, like the faint fragrance of roses, left on the hand after touching the petals. You carry the echo of his reminders, that longing is holy, that silence is a teacher, that love is the path, and that what you seek has always been seeking you. These are not lessons to memorize. They are seeds to let fall into your dreams, where they can grow in the fertile soil of your sleeping heart. Rumi often spoke of sleep as a doorway. In dreams, he believed, the soul loosens its ties to the body, slipping more easily into the realms of spirit. What you cannot grasp in waking life may come to you in dream as a symbol, a whisper, a visitation. And so, he would urge you not to resist sleep, but to welcome it as a kind of pilgrimage. To close your eyes is to step into the unseen garden, to walk once more among the fields where the beloved waits. As your breath slows, as your body softens against the bed, imagine yourself being carried gently, as though upon a river. The current is soft, the water warm, the stars above guiding your passage. You do not need to paddle. You do not need to steer. You are carried, held, drawn ever closer to the ocean of rest. Every thought that rises, let it drift away, like a leaf upon the current. Every worry, set it down, for the river is wide enough to carry it all. You are returning now, not only to sleep, but to unity. The drop is returning to the ocean. The flute is resting in silence. The dervish has ceased his spinning and bowed in stillness. You, too, are returning to yourself, to peace, to the beloved who has been with you all along. Rumi would tell you, do not fear this mystery. Let yourself fall into it, as you would fall into the arms of a beloved friend. Sleep is not emptiness but fullness, not an ending but a return. And when you wake, you will carry with you the quiet assurance that you are sought, that you are loved, that the journey of longing is the most beautiful journey of all. So drift now, softly, into the mystery. Let Rumi's words fade into dreams. Let your breath be the reed flute, carrying the song of separation and union. Let your heart be the garden, blooming endlessly in beauty. Let your soul be the drop, dissolving joyfully into the sea. And as you surrender to this rest, know that you are safe, you are held, and you are home. May your night be peaceful, and your dreams be soft and kind. Sleep well, dear listener, and let Rumi's words carry you into the quiet embrace of rest. If you're still awake, don't worry. Simply follow your curiosity and click on one of the 2 videos on the screen now. Each one will guide you deeper into calm reflection and gentle wisdom. And if you'd like more nights filled with stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and join us again. Until next time, may you rest in peace, love, and light. Sleep well, traveler. For even in dreams, what you seek is already seeking you.